What's up, everybody? Thank you for tapping into this episode of Do Your Homework. For those of you who watched last week, you will be able to keep up. With those of you who didn't, I would suggest you watch last week's episode before tapping in here. You may get a little lost. We're going to just dive right into my post-Caucus review. I wanted to wait some time to let some of the nerves settle and kind of let everything bake in and see kind of exactly what direction this thing was going before I put out new content, and I was rewarded greatly because yesterday Ron DeSantis also suspended his campaign. I've had a little bit more time to digest Vivek suspending his campaign. It was a bit disheartening, I will not lie about that at all, to see the result of last week's caucus. The fact that nearly 20% of people voted for Nikki Haley and only 8% voted for Vivek shows that the establishment is well ingrained, and that it is very difficult to get rid of old ways of thinking and old ways of doing things. The Bush Senior, Bush Junior neocons are still out here in full force. The Uniparty that has really had a stranglehold on the United States government since Clinton in 92 is strong. I mean, the people, Clinton voters they're Nikki Haley voters. That's the funny part. That's the crazy thing, right? Think of people that are Nikki Haley's age. 30 years ago, they'd have been 21. They'd have been voting. They voted for Bill Clinton. They probably voted for George W. Bush. I guarantee you the only one she didn't vote for was Obama. She probably on Biden train. Come on now. Like, these are not... She was a Tea Party conservative. You were only a Tea Party conservative as long as it was cool. As soon as it stopped being cool, you went back to being a Republican. Get the fuck out of here. Stop with that. But this is exactly what Vivek's been saying for weeks now. For weeks he's been saying this is going to be a two-horse race. It's going to be Trump and a puppet they can control, and they're going to try to take out Trump. You got Trump. You got the puppet Nikki Haley. This has been in motion for a long time. But thankfully, I do believe Trump is going to win. I appreciate what Vivek has been doing, being so outspoken, even after he got out of the race. That's been a really cool sight to see. He's clearly having an impact on Donald Trump, which is good. I know Donald Trump is willing to take advice, and more often than not, he's hired decent people. That's how he's made most of his money, is by hiring good people. But in the instance of politics, I mean, he said he was going to drain the swamp, and then he hired it. I mean, that doesn't make sense, buddy. This time I think he knows better. Now, perfect dream world scenario, and look, I think Trump would almost be agreeable to this. I mean, he's almost 80. And as long as he gets to take credit for it, or at least some of the credit for it, I don't think he really cares. If Vivek can be VP and de facto president at home, I think we'll be good. If you put Vivek in charge of gutting the deep state, getting mass deportations underway, getting rid of the federal regulations, handling all the legal mumbo-jumbo that's going to go into that, and the execution of it, and then let Donald Trump go handle things abroad. Let him get the trade deals in place to de-source from China. Let him get the trade deals in place in Europe to distance ourselves from NATO. Let him get down to Central and South America and see if he can smooth things over and get things going in the right direction for them to build their border walls and to regain their sovereignty from drug cartels. If we can have an arrangement like that, that'll be perfect, because it'll give Vivek an opportunity to implement his vision for his campaign without actually being president, and give him a leg up in the 2028 election, and we can get this thing rolling. I'll remind everybody, no political party has won 3 straight elections since Reagan, Bush, 80, 84, 88. They were Republicans. So you had Reagan, Bush. I think there's a strong possibility here we can get Trump, Ramaswamy. If we're lucky. That's a dream world scenario. I'm hanging on to it. The signs have been promising, except for the fact that you got the cult of Trump that has bought hook, line, and sinker on all of these outdated, debunked bullshit accusations about the WEF and him being in Big Pharma and all this other stuff that I've already talked about before, but there's been some new things that I found out, so I'll share them with you real quick before we get into some other things. There's a report coming around that he's made money off of the COVID vaccines. That's false. So in 2017, he invested in a company in Canada that was working on a technology that was a delivery system for vaccines. So basically, you put the vaccine in this liquid, and then the whole point of the vaccine delivery system is that when they give you, the way the vaccine works is they actually give you a dormant part of the virus. So the virus, you're injected with the virus, your immune system gets exposed to it, it fights it, attacks it, and then it learns how to do that, so that you don't have to do that. You don't have to get it, right? So if you were to ever, get hepatitis C or be exposed to hepatitis C, your body would already know how to attack it before it gets into your bloodstream and becomes dangerous for you, right? That's how a vaccine is meant to work. Same with polio, measles, and all that other stuff. All right. This vaccine delivery system was meant for hepatitis C, actually. So they actually vaccinated hepatitis C, and then they moved on to hepatitis B. So he's developing, vaccine delivery systems that are for blood viruses that have been around for a very long time, and getting rid of them entirely, forever, using this vaccine delivery system. Moderna steals the vaccine delivery system, uses it for the COVID vaccines, and then Vivek sues them for stealing his technology, which is what any company would do, like literally. If I steal Coca-Cola's recipe and then I go using Coca-Cola's recipe to make soda, Coca-Cola's going to sue me. That's how that works. This is just business 101. I don't feel like I should have to explain that to too many people, but you'd be surprised how many people believe this stuff. Secondly was he made money off of Pfizer. I don't know what specific drug it was, but I found an article, and this is the whole... If you don't know much about what Vivek's business is, where I pray that you go watch his podcast with Sean Ryan, because he explains it perfectly, but I'll do my best here. So his company, essentially, Roivant, the drug company, bought drugs from Big Pharma that Big Pharma essentially had given up on. And Vivek was like, you know what, you gave up on that, but I think it's a good product. I think you're just bullshitting. So I'll buy it from you for pennies on the dollar. And with a little bit more development, I'll bet I can get them to market. What does he do? Buys one from Pfizer. A little bit more development, gets it on the market. Boom, billions. He bought that for like $2 million. Bought the patent for pennies on the dollar. Boom, $1 billion drug. That was his whole company. That's what he did. He went to Big Pharma and said, I'm better at your job than you are. Watch me. And he did better than every other drug company in the business at that time. It takes 10 years of FDA testing just to get a drug passed. He passed 5 drugs in 5 years. Why? Because he was buying drugs that were on year 8, year 9, some cases year 10, and said, you know what? You got lazy here and didn't bring it across the finish line. You don't think it's worth anything. I do. Boom. You got a whole business like that. And so he did the same thing with Arbutus. He's like, you know what? They got a good product. Let me put $116 million there. Let me tell you guys something. If Arbutus was Big Pharma, they would not need $116 million from Vivek to develop a drug. $116 million is not shit in that industry. $116 million is like 1 year of one drug being developed. And you need 10 of those. That's nothing to them. They have hundreds of millions of dollars. Why do you think they keep getting sued and then just keep giving money away to people and they're still rich as fuck? It's certainly not because they've run out of fucking money and they need to go get $116 million from a new company, a startup. No. Get your head out of your ass, guys. Come on now. So I don't want to spend the whole time talking about that. I'm glad we got that done in 9 minutes. I wanted to talk a little bit about another project that I've been working on. It's called the Convention of States. Love the Convention of States. So without further ado, I want to introduce somebody to that, what it is, and how I think it could be, a driving force for change. Firstly, there is actually a call, Convention of States, I believe it's Foundation, and then Convention of States Action. They're nonprofit organizations that are designed to educate people and promote the application of an Article 5 convention and legislation that they've been looking to get. I will comment with their website so you can sign their petition. I think it's a worthy cause. It's awesome. Their main causes are term limits for the judiciary, budget for Congress, budget for Congress, and then term limits, obviously, for Congress as well. And this is huge because we see what's been going on in Texas. And I'll include a list. I think there's about 19 or 24 states. I think it's 24 states that have, 24 states have helped out Texas. 19 states, including Texas, have applied for the Convention of States. So this is huge, guys. I mean, we're in a fight between state sovereignty and United States sovereignty as a whole. This is a battle that's been boiling up for quite some time. So to give you guys a bit of background, Article 5 Convention and Article 5 of the Constitution is about amending the Constitution. So you have the front doorway, 2/3 of Congress pushes through legislation, they send it out to the states for ratification. That way sucks. I don't even know why we have that way. I wish we didn't have that way, to be 100% honest with you. We should almost strike that out. But it's there. We're going to keep it. Luckily, there's a second way. The states also have a way to, correct bad legislation, and we'll get into bad legislation here in a second. But the second way is that if 2/3 of the state legislatures, so if the state legislatures and 2/3 of the states, that's 34 states, Kansas is looking to become one of them. They got some legal proceedings going on right now. Then they can basically force a convention of states with all the states, and then at that convention, 3/4 of the states agree on something, then it gets ratified. And either way, you can get ratification. So you may be asking, why do we need to amend the Constitution? Don't we have enough amendments? We do have enough amendments. In fact, we have too many amendments. Okay? We need to get rid of the 16th Amendment. What if I told you we can get rid of federal income tax forever if we just repealed the 16th Amendment? Just like repealing the 18th Amendment got rid of the prohibition. With a little scribble of the pen, we had prohibited alcohol. And then with another scribble of the pen, we got rid of that bullshit-ass law. That's all it takes, guys. That's all it takes. We could just get rid of the law, and then there's no more federal income tax. Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? Then you don't have to go out. Then the federal government doesn't have an excuse to go out. They don't have the money to go out and pay the Ukrainian kleptocrats. They don't have the money to send to Israel. They don't have any money to give to some third world banana republic that does nothing for anybody, anywhere. We could just keep our money. And imagine how much more you could do in life if you got to keep another 30% of your money. Wouldn't that be awesome? So, yeah, I think we probably should get rid of the 16th Amendment. That's probably not the only one we should get rid of. We should probably put term limits on the judiciary. These are people that hold lifetime appointments. Okay, and there's technically checks and balances, but their only check is that they have to be appointed by the president and then confirmed by the Senate. A Senate which is not made up of the body it used to once be made up for, and we'll get into that here in a second. But if the president is Joe Biden and the Senate is Democrat, then they can appoint whoever they want. And they'll just appoint and confirm, and then there's no check. Once that person gets in power, there's no check. There's nothing other than their own free will, their own willingness to interpret the Constitution as they see fit. That is the only thing stopping the judiciary branch. They're technically bound to the Constitution or whatever their interpretation of it is, or their interpretation of somebody else's interpretation. It's stupid. It is stupid. So term limits for the judiciary. Make sure that they're not just going in there willy-nilly. And then this one's more controversial. I don't know if the Convention of States is on board with this one, so I'll recuse them right now. This is Christians' idea, an idea only. Well, it's not just my idea. There are a lot of people who actually agree with me on this. The people who confirm those judiciary appointments, and look, there's a reason the Senate has the jobs that it has, because in the beginning, the Senate was appointed by the states. Okay, and we need to get back to that. That's the 17th Amendment, is that people vote directly for senators. That's not how this should go. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why right now. The Senate of the United States government exists for two reasons, and two reasons only. One is to equalize representation among the several states in one house of Congress. Every state gets 2 senators. Okay, the People's House is divvied up and represented by as many people live in those districts, in that jurisdiction. Okay, nobody's mad about that. That's how that works. Okay, but you got the People's House and the state's Senate. The second reason for the Senate is to ensure that the states themselves are directly represented in federal government. Okay? As I said, prior to the passage of the 17th Amendment, which, no shock, the 16th, the 17th, and the 18th were all passed at the same time, and all of them should be gotten rid of, along with the Federal Reserve Act. This is no shock. This is the Woodrow Wilson, the beginning of the globalist progressivist movement here in the United States. It was ugly, and we need to rid ourselves of the entire foundation on which it was built. We got to get rid of it. Senators were appointed by the state legislature. James Madison, one of the creators of the Constitution, one of the framers, explained it best when he states that the Senate was a, quote, necessary fence against, quote, the fickleness and passion of the general public, and by extension, the House of Representatives that they elect. This is what we talked about last week and the week before. All right, a constitutional republic provides a framework of laws that are more constant than the moods of the majority. Right? The moods of the majority sway. It's hard to make law become habit, especially if you have a habit of just changing the laws. Okay? So you can't just let the whims of the majority rule everything. Okay? There has to be something that is stable, something that is consistent. The state is never going anywhere. You and I will come and go. We live and we die. The state of Kansas will still be here. The state of Kansas deserves to be represented in Congress. Same with the state of Missouri or everything else. Okay? The constituency of the state itself lays a better foundation for the rule of law, there we go, than the swaying moods of the majority. Therefore, at the Convention of States, I believe that this amendment should also be repealed. I can name one more reason, being nobody listening to this right now can even name their senators without Google. You can't. I know one of them is Roger Marshall. I don't even know the other one. There's no point of having people represent you. You don't know them. It's easy for them to just come and go every 6 years. You see them once every 5.5 years, and they whisper sweet nothings in your ear. They get reelected. They go back to D.C., and you never hear from them again. Right? This is kind of what D.C. counts on. That's why they like having direct voted senators. They're not beholden to the state anymore. Okay? The average person just simply does not pay enough attention to national politics to form an honest and trustworthy opinion. It's a fact. Easy, very easy to come and go. And that's what's been happening since the passage of this amendment and what the framers were looking to avoid. That is why they were appointed by and therefore answered directly to the states. There was a direct relationship between the state legislatures and the member of the Senate because they would appoint them. The state, by nature, is also closer to the federal government than you or I. Remember when we first got this thing rolling, the creation of the polis, individual, family, community, city, state, then fed. State, fed, me, fed. Okay, by nature, the state is more closely related to the federal government than the individual. We're very disconnected. There are several layers between us and them. Okay, that's why we have the People's House. They come every 2 years. You keep eyes on them. Right? They don't come and go every 6 years. They come and go every 2 years. That's why it's set up this way. Okay, that's why it's the People's House. They have to come answer to you every 2 years and tell you what they've been doing. And if they want to get reelected, they better be doing a good job. And if they're not, you vote somebody else in and they go for 2 years. And then they get to come back in 18 months and tell you what they've been doing. Right? But when you have somebody coming and going every 6 years, you have no idea who they are. And they have no loyalty to the state, which, again, you're closely related to the state than you are the Fed. So by nature, you're the one voting for the state legislators, and then the state legislators were the ones appointing the senators. So you were already being represented indirectly by voting for the state legislator, right? Now, the integrity and foundation of a constitutional republic, this beautiful constitutional republic that we have, rests on the power and ability of the states to govern themselves and have representation in the union that is accountable to them and them alone. The states have to have power. They have to have their own sovereignty. They have to have their own representation. We are all worse off for not having state representation in the federal Congress, because the state representation in the federal Congress will not allow the presidency to just pick and choose whatever judges they want in whatever appellate court or Supreme Court that they want, because the states will look at that and say, hold on, how is this person going to rule on, the state sovereignty here versus the state sovereignty here? How are they going to rule on what powers? They're going to check all of this against their own self-interest, which is to the state, versus being so disconnected from the people that they forget they even answer to the people. They're like, oh yeah, I can go get votes. I can drum that up. I'll vote no on this one and then go tell my people, I voted no against this, but then I'll vote yes on another one and we just won't talk about that. Right? And that's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. It's horrible. It's goddamn horrible. Thomas Jefferson once said that the state and federal government were two arms of the same governing body, one the foreign and the other the domestic. But by instituting the 17th Amendment, we've weakened the relationship between the two and undermined the entire concept. And the whole country's been worse off ever since. Think of what happened since we implemented these amendments. Since the Federal Reserve Act, the 16th, 17th Amendment, we've been in 2 world wars, the Cold War, Korea, Vietnam, Iran, Iraq. The only thing that's gotten better is general human ingenuity, which you would expect to see in a progressive society. Like literally, the Romans got better at things over time. Like, that's just a natural progression of human. Nothing within our processes has gotten better. The top tax rate before the 16th Amendment was 7%. And that was technically illegal. They couldn't actually do that. It was only 7%. And we led the world in GDP. We were staying out of wars. We didn't end up involved in the Franco-Prussian War. We didn't involve ourselves in the England's Boer War. We didn't involve ourselves in the Russo-Japanese War. We didn't involve ourselves in the Balkan Wars. We were doing just fine. We were doing actually fantastic. And then Wilson gets a second term. It all goes to shit. It all went to shit pretty bad, too. All right, that's enough for my rant today. Again, please go look up the Convention of States. If it's something that aligns with your values, I would encourage you to sign the petition and see what you can do to make a difference in your community. Every community needs, activists. It's going to take everybody. It's a group effort to get this country moving in the right direction. There was never going to be a presidential candidate to come save you. It was always meant to be within your power to govern yourself. And I would prefer it much better if we got the federal government out of our business. And I believe we have the mechanism to do so. But it requires everybody to wake up, everybody to do their part, everybody to understand the nature of what these things are, how they're meant to interact. And so I hope that this series is doing that for you guys. Next episode, we're going to talk about, we're going to review what happens tomorrow with the New Hampshire primary. That should be fun. And we'll talk a little bit about America's COVID response. And then next week, we're going to get into citizenship, and we'll get back to drawing from Aristotle. I know some of you guys are missing that. So got to keep up with the current events. So that's why we had this episode. Wanted to introduce you guys all to the Convention of States. Again, I hope you guys really take that seriously and look that up, because I really do think it's one of those things that's going to help us moving forward. Oh, and next episode, we're going to talk about Texas and how I believe the Convention of States kind of goes hand in hand with Texas. I do think more states need to take Texas's side, especially Kansas, because if this thing becomes hostile in any way, Texas is our best chance to continue getting the energy and agricultural products and trade that we need, along with the manpower in order to produce things. Because we obviously don't have it here in Kansas. There's only 2 million people here. But I think we'll do the right thing. I hope many of you who are watching this believe that that is also the right thing. And if you don't, leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you guys say. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.